Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Nick Halaris Show. Our guest this week is Daniel Hettwer, the founder and CEO of Hidden Worlds Entertainment. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I wanted when I first came across your company, um, I was like, man, I got to meet this person and I got to do a podcast episode. So I feel like the best place to start this interview is for you to just tell us all what you're up to because it's absolutely fascinating.
No, I appreciate it, and thank you for inviting us and giving us the platform here. Um, Hidden Worlds Entertainment is all about having fun while doing good. We're living in this weird environment where we have this perception that making a positive impact cannot be done, in a fun, entertaining way, and that's absolute nonsense, right? So we're trying to show the world that you can have fun while doing good. You can eat amazing proteins while helping the planet. You can help mental health awareness while going to an immersive art exhibit. You can do all of these things while having a good time, and it's not mutually exclusive. So that's really the mission of the company.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me what sort of the plan is. Like you guys have a very unique business model based on maybe some other interesting business models. But as far as I know, no one is doing what you're doing. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, so we really have two focus areas. We started off in the dining space, right? Because we are originally nature conservation people. We're working with people like Philippe Cousteau and Dr. Austin Gallinger and all of these icons in the ocean conservation space. So we focused initially on dining because our food consumption has such a big impact on biodiversity. It has such a big impact from a climate change or carbon point of view. So we developed this very interesting immersive dining experience focused on the ocean, where we're not forcing you to only eat plant-based. We actually allow you or incentivize you to eat the ocean, to eat fish, but in a way that helps the ocean. So we work with overpopulated species, invasive species, and so forth. So with every bite that you take, even though you eat fish, you actually help the ocean because you're taking away some invasive and overpopulated species. And this is very premium protein as well. So we have a no-kill caviar, for example, which is one of the most expensive on the planet. We work with purple sea urchin, which is an absolute delicacy in Japan, and they know their sushi and their uni, right? But it hasn't really taken off in the US yet. So it's a really premium, beautiful dining experience where you help the ocean with every bite and every sip because our cocktails are ocean positive too. So if you do have a little bit of a hangover the next day, thank you so much for your service. You've helped protect the ocean with your sacrifice. Um, and the whole experience basically takes you into an underwater environment where every dish is matched with a new scene. So imagine stepping into a mangrove forest, and we take you to the coral reefs, and then we take you into the deep sea. So you're really there to explore these different marine ecosystems while you're eating, while you're helping the ocean. It's fun, it's entertaining, it's educational. We built tribes and groups around the table, and it's been highly rated and highly successful. So that's one business that we're running, and we're now expanding it with additional general seating type elements and so forth to capture, people that don't necessarily want to commit to a 2.5 hour dining adventure, but want to go a little bit more casual, where we still serve premium protein like Norwegian red king crab, which is invasive but delicious. So that's one side of the business. The other side is the immersive art component, where we're looking more and more into the mental health space and awareness for different abled people and their challenges. So we're developing a very strong IP. I can't share too much about it, but it is built on a European, very famous musician that has had to overcome several mental health challenges, as well as several challenges from a personal ability point of view, and he succeeded and became one of an absolute icon in the music space. So it just shows the power of grit and seeing things through and believing in yourself. So that's the other side of the business. But whatever we do, we always do it in a way where people have an absolute blast and come out hopefully a bit more aware and a bit more engaged in important issues.
Yeah, fascinating. So tell me more about the dining. So my understanding of it, I haven't been to the place. It's in Miami, right?
Correct. So we've been running it in Miami. We actually closed it down for now because we're building it out. So it's going to be an expanded version of it. We've always had this immersive experience only, which basically takes you on this full adventure. It's a pre-show element to get people all in the mood and come together as one tribe around their table, and then we take you into the immersive space, which is about 2,000 square feet large, 17-foot high ceilings, fully mapped 360, projection mapping on the table, interactive elements. Um, and then there's a post experience in order to really solidify that communal, tribal feeling, if you will. Um, and yeah, that's the core of it. And now, like I said, we're expanding on it with a bit of a general seating component to it.
Very cool. And so in the immersive experience, essentially, you're in this room that has screens everywhere. And is there like someone guiding you through it? Like, is there like a storyteller or something like that? Or how do you tie it all together?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So it's imagine being in an IMAX theater, but the screen is wrapped all around you and it's on the floor and it's on the tables, right? So we're trying to provide a very seamless environment, trying to avoid corners as much as possible to really like immerse you fully in this environment. Um, that's a tech thing, right? And I feel that a lot of people stop there. People get very, very gung ho about tech, and it has to be the latest projection and all of these things. And we don't really believe in that too much. Tech is a great enabler and it can amplify the emotional connection that we can create. But the core to emotional connection is really storytelling. So, to your point, is there somebody to guide you through it? Yes, absolutely, there is. And it's very important because story is really what connects people emotionally. And it's the central element to our impactainment experiences. We follow a 3-step process that I can highlight as well if you're interested. But story is really core because we know that through story people get emotionally connected. We have this assumption in the conservation or education space that facts matter, right? But facts don't matter. Every smoker knows that smoking is bad. People still smoke. If facts would really matter, we wouldn't have smokers, right? We wouldn't have a lot of the issues that we have today. People are not dumb, right? People are not stupid. They're very aware that some of the actions that they're taking are not beneficial to them or to society. So education is oftentimes not really the lacking issue here. It's personal relevance. It's emotions. It's a connection that goes deeper than just a factual basis, right? So that's where we're trying to anchor in. So every dish comes with a little insight from an educational point of view, but a much bigger. In Germany, we call it like a dash of salt that is storytelling based.
And who's telling the story? Is it like actors that you brought in? Like, how do you actually pull that off?
Yeah, so we have a maitre d, a very competent person as a matter of fact, I had to be that person in the first one. I'm glad that we found somebody much better and much more educated, much more charming than me. So we have a great maitre d that comes from the food and beverage space, but has a storytelling background, and he basically guides the guests through the night. He provides these mini stories, these emotional connections, and then he is also very good in trying to get the tables engaged and working with each other and connecting with each other because um, most of the value that people get out of any social experience is the social element, right? So it goes beyond storytelling from his or in the future her role. It goes into the whole facilitating of social connections. If you ask yourself, why do people go to a bar? And in most cases, people don't go to a bar because they want to get hammered, right? People go to a bar because they want to chat to somebody or not be lonely or make new
Yeah.
friends or just get out of their, you know, mindset on their job and everything. So that part of it is incredibly important. And that's why we need to have a physical person, not just a voiceover.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I like your point about story. Like, I feel like climate change is one of these things like smoking, right? Like basically everybody knows what's going on, right? Like everyone knows that the giant Pacific plastic garbage patch exists. There's been so many videos done on it,
Right.
but yet there's very little action being taken on it. And I think that's because of this overemphasis on the facts and the sort of the science. Like I feel like the PR people behind the movement for climate change have done a really bad job because it's all about science and they're trying to establish credibility when you could just like go out there and show like what this plastic looks like. Like there's other ways that you could effectively achieve the result than just talking about the science side of it. And curious what your
Yeah.
take is. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the conservation space, we kind of are the dumbest smart people. We know exactly what needs to happen, but we're completely incompetent when it comes to the communication of that, right? And that's where we have, when we look into the impactainment process in a very basic form, right? It's really three steps. It's number one, reach people that don't yet believe in your mission, but be careful in who you want to reach. So why I'm saying this is, if I'm doing an experience that only caters to people that already believe in the conservation message, then I've had zero impact, right?
Yeah.
Because these people already believe in it. Now, if I'm trying to reach the very far opposite of the people that believe in the climate movement, so the extreme against climate, against green energy and all of that, most likely I won't succeed because their mindset is so solidified and that they're anti, right? So the first step is reaching the right people that don't yet believe but can be somewhat, turned into believers, if you will. So it's sort of like the middle that's like slightly leaning towards the other side, right? And that's how you win elections. That's how you create movements. That's really the core to it.
Yep.
How do you get these people, right? And that's where conservation is doing such a poor job, because we keep on blaming and shaming, and people don't like to be blamed and shamed. That's just what it is, right? And psychology gives you the perfect tool set for all of this, right? There's a concept called reactance, right? If a Trump supporter says Biden is old, or if a Biden supporter says, Trump has had legal issues, and I'm not qualifying any of that, but you are not going to convince the other side with that argument. If you're trying to push your point of view on somebody else, the person is going to push back, right? As a matter of fact, back in the days, JFK had a very interesting campaign. Was that against Reagan? I think it was against Reagan, right? Where they put Reagan's face on a poster and said, "Would you buy a used car from this man?"
Yeah. Or
Right?
Nixon.
Oh,
Nixon. Yeah.
was it Nixon? Yeah, sorry.
Nixon.
My American history isn't that strong,
Yeah,
but
that's okay. Yeah.
so they said, "Would you buy a used car from this man?" Right? And so they didn't push their opinion on anybody, but they rather just made a statement that asked a question, right? So you can make your own decision based on that. And that was a very, very successful campaign. So, you have to reach the other side in the right way. We are trying to do it in creating the most fun and amazing, sexy dining experiences on the planet, that cater to people that consume seafood, that don't really talk about conservation at all in our marketing material. That's just what it is. That's how we get people through the door. The second step then is the storytelling aspect, and that's where you create an emotional connection. And that's how you convert somebody that now is in your show to somebody that hopefully is aware of what you're trying to achieve. And then the last step is just solidifying that through an action, through the triggering of habits. We're trying to get people to participate in a beach cleanup. So this tribal feeling, this community feeling that they've established around their table is then hopefully solidified by going on a beach and helping clean the beach, because it's a very non-political thing. Everybody hates dirty beaches. Doesn't matter if you're, a libertarian, a Democrat, or a Republican. I think we can all agree that trash sucks, right? So that's in a very basic format, our three-step process there.
Very cool. And on the after the sort of action step, when you had the facility opened in Miami, like how many people that dined there signed up to go do a beach cleaning? And did you do it like the next day? Like how did you even organize that?
Yeah, so we we weren't as good, I want to say, in terms of tracking the exact percentage conversion, because we didn't want to force people to do a sign up. You know, the more steps that you take, the harder it is to get somebody to act, right? So we did a post experience email that invited people to participate in scheduled cleanups that we had during the run, and we collected 2 metric tons over a 2 week period in one case, so about 1 metric ton per week. So while I don't have the exact number of people participating, I can tell you that our guests collected, what's that, 140-ish kilos per day on average, right? And that's a
Yeah,
pretty
that's a
solid
lot.
performance there.
That's a lot. Like, because this is light stuff. That's a lot of trash.
It's a lot of trash, yeah. And if you look into our social media, we have, I think there's one picture that was posted of just a group of, I want to say, 50 people or so standing in front of bags and bags and bags and bags of trash. And it's heartwarming because it shows that we've had an impact, but it's also heart-wrecking because it shows the impact of or the scale of the problem that we have.
Yeah, totally. There's trash. There's trash everywhere.
Yeah, how's
Um,
that in California? I mean, you I assume it's like this everywhere now, right? I assume you see the same issue over there, no?
for sure. Yeah, it's some beaches are better than others. You know, like LA actually in particular has a lot of trash just because of the way the beaches are. Like if you go up and down the California coast, like San Diego, a lot of those beaches are cleaner, but just it's because of the way they're laid out. Like there's big cliffs, so it's harder for trash to kind of make its way there. But it's a huge problem.
Right,
Um, yeah, I had a woman actually on the podcast like a month ago who um, was a entrepreneur in Malaysia, and she had was doing ecotourism. She's basically like a pioneer of ecotourism in Malaysia, but realized that having all these tourists there was creating like this massive garbage problem in the jungle.
right.
So plastic bags everywhere. And so her and her partner developed this like incredible technology that they prototyped where using some kind of like, I don't even understand the tech, but essentially you could throw anything in there and it uses like a version of like oxygen ions to burn this trash away. And it's meant to be a decentralized distributed technology. So you put these trash things.
It's
So we
it's
talked
funny
a lot
that you
about
say that. I actually heard of that a while back. I think 4 or 5 years ago or so. Somebody told me about that Malaysian group. So I think or you're talking about the same one.
yeah.
Look, Malaysia is a great example of where we're just collectively going wrong, right? Because in the Western world, quite often we talk about our recycling rates and everything, and then we're kind of like wiping our hands. But we do have to realize that quite often, just that stuff is just being packed into containers full of trash and shipped over to Malaysia as one of the key markets. And over there, there's a lot less control over how that trash is then processed from there. Is it burned? Is it it's just dumped? Is it what's happening? So it just shows that we have to make the right decisions at the source rather than to trying to outsource and then wipe our hands clean and be like, oh well, we're recycling, right? That's not quite often not as helpful as we think it is. And when people start realizing this and they look into images of places in Malaysia or the Philippines or some of these other places where we're shipping our trash to, you have little 3-year-old, 4-year-old kids. I have a 3-year-old daughter who I love more than anything, right? Imagining her just being in a, surrounded by trash and all the toxins and everything is absolutely heartbreaking, and that's why I think it's important that we all, try to do something impactful.
I agree. Like I think this question of trash really is a question of consumption.
Right,
And we have a crazy materialistic society here in America and Europe. Like basically the developed world is consuming items at an unbelievable clip. And the rest of the world wants to participate.
right,
And rightfully so, right? Like who's to say that, someone in one of the countries that is not as wealthy as America shouldn't participate in the prosperity if it's available. But the world doesn't have enough space, doesn't have enough materials for everyone to consume at the level at which we in Europe have been consuming. It's a logistical issue. Um,
It
yeah,
it is, and it's when you look into the process of how you get some of these products to scale, like the ultra processed foods and the long shelf lives, and then plastic packaging and all of these things, that it all goes into the same direction, right? So you kind of have this normal distribution when it comes to your trash impact, depending on your income level, right? Because if you're like very wealthy, you tend to quite often consume more fresh produce, right? You consume more fresh bread. You consume healthier options that are oftentimes not um, packaged in a way. Of course, you probably also have more air travel and cars and these kind of things. But I'm just talking about like food consumption and packaging and these kind of things, right? On the other end of the spectrum, you kind of are very similar, right? Where you also have these like local, from a local market somewhere in a developing country and so forth, right? Like, so fruits and bread and these kind of things. There's a very interesting article that just came out on Wired where somebody is talking about how they're predicting consumption in a country by looking into the fridges of people and then giving people money, right? So he was, I think, in India at a fairly poor family, and they were consuming primarily bread and fruit and so forth, locally sourced. And then he gave them a little bit of cash, and what then he studied what they bought, and they went out and bought like a Cadbury chocolate bar, right? And that comes with plastic packaging and everything, right? But you can see, it's like as you trade up, that's when your trash consumption increases up to the point where you're super wealthy that, it doesn't make necessarily sense anymore. But it is shocking that, you know, your consumption, as we are trading up, definitely will lead to more plastic packaging and these kind of things. And that's concerning for sure.
that's concerning. Yeah, and I read a similar article. I think it might have just been like a newsletter type article, not from a big publication, but it was looking at that same dynamic with respect to protein consumption.
Right.
And the article was saying something along the lines of like, these species that we eat, the meat that we eat, chickens and pigs and cows, they already represent like a humongous percentage of non-human organic life. Like they've
Right.
essentially become a concentrated form of life on Earth because of the fact that we enjoy to eat them. And if you run the math on, let's say China, India, the big population centers were to consume at the same level as America and Europe, these herds would have to be enormous, and
Right.
it's questionable whether it's even possible. That we might. Oh, same with fish. Like we'd have to drain the ocean of fish and kill every. The cow herds would have to be 10x the size, and it just like the math doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it doesn't. Look, I think it's such a difficult question though, right? Because we have to also see like where do we go, right? How do we create change, right? Like, are we gonna buy ourselves some time and hope for somebody that is brilliant to have breakthroughs? Because lab grown meat and artificial proteins and so forth are, they are going to come, and hopefully. And I know there's a lot of debate, especially in the vegan space, about processed and biotech and all of these kind of things. But if we really care about the planet, we do have to acknowledge that wishful thinking is not going to get us anywhere, right? People want to eat protein, and so we'll have to serve them that. Trying to convince China and India not to eat meat. Well, India is probably going to be a bit easier, but trying to convince China not to eat meat is going to be a very, very difficult undertaking. So where we come in with our experiences is that we're really hoping that we can inspire, right? Because there's a lot of geniuses out there. As a matter of fact, I think the distribution on a genius IQ is what, 0.25% or so, and there's 500 million people going through theme parks every year. So 1.25 million. I'm not counting repeat visitors here, right? Like, let's just say about a million geniuses, right, on an
Yeah.
Einstein type level are going to theme parks every year. Imagine that we could motivate them or incentivize them to focus their attention on this. If we can achieve a breakthrough in fusion because of that, because we inspired somebody, we would have already solved so much of the issue, right? Like carbon removal, for example, is just not feasible right now because the input energy is you know, leading to a very neglectable benefit in carbon removal, right? Because the input energy that's required to remove the carbon is so high. But once you solve fusion, you don't have that issue anymore, you know? And the same goes for a lot of the on the protein side and so forth. So, you know, of course, we're trying to get people to make better consumption choices, and in doing so, slow down the development that we have. Um, and we're not saying don't eat meat. We're actually saying go ahead and eat fish, you know, but maybe consider oysters and lionfish. You know, you're actually helping the ocean with it. But then, more importantly, we're looking to inspire, because I think that's where you really get that's really the binary outcome that we need to achieve and support here.
Okay, so that's like the 0 to 1 outcome of this effort is you could get some young people to reorient their brains into a different direction.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, the thing is, when you look into some of these big breakthroughs, right, they all came through inspiration, right? The moon, the U.S. moon program, right? The Apollo program was really an effort of mass motivation and mass belief and inspiration. There's a lot of studies, especially in the environmental space, that kind of say that both hope and despair get you to make similar choices. So to motivate you through a negative message or through a positive message as a single entity, both are almost equally effective. But negative messaging kills innovation. Innovation is only possible when you're hopeful and you believe that your actions matter and you can create change. So that's why, you know, our intent here really is to tell a positive story and to hopefully get the Disneys and the Universals and all of them to look into this and say, hey, this is really cool. You know, maybe the next rainforest cafe, we shouldn't serve steak in it that actually promotes rainforest deforestation, but use it as a platform to get the kids engaged in the space, and hopefully we get that Einstein, you know, or that Marie Curie to dedicate their life to fusion tech or something similar, and we achieve that breakthrough, because then a lot of the things that we're talking about don't matter anymore, you know.
That's right. You can the math, which looks like Malthusian math, like every time people study this stuff, it looks like impossible, but it ends up
Right,
happening. Oh, yeah.
right.
Um, I love this word that I think you may have invented. This impactainment. I think it's a great word, great marketing word, but it makes sense. We live in a world where entertainment is primary, right? Like that's what people are doing all day long. Even when they're
Right.
at work, they're entertaining themselves on social media, wasting time, whatever you want to call it. That's what people
Right.
are craving. So I think that you're onto something. And what's the vision, right? Like what's the grand vision? How many of these do you want to open? I got a little bit of sense of it about, maybe partnerships with some big media companies, but tell me more.
Yeah, look, I think first of all, thank you for acknowledging the impactainment. We worked on that quite a bit. It's such a simple word, but you know, we try to create a contrast to edutainment, because a lot of people are talking about edutainment, but like, as we know, like, education does not necessarily create lasting change, you know. Emotion is really where it's at, and that's where impactainment comes in. um, the vision, look, there's a company vision and there is a movement vision, right? So on a company vision, the full immersive experience is something that you need to have fresh eyeballs, right? So that really works in certain core markets. You know, you can think about the Bahamas, um, big resorts in Mexico, places like Miami, New York, you know, LA, um, you know, Dubai, Singapore, London, Paris, perhaps. So that's the full scale immersive experience. There is also an opportunity to license it into spaces like the cruise line space, for example. Um, they have a big incentive to communicate more on the conservation side, because cruise lines are not necessarily the best industry for the oceans, you know. So there's an opportunity there to use this as a format to educate guests and also the cruise line operators on how to potentially make better choices. Um, and then we have the general seating side of it, where we're really trying to expand our menu, this whole invasive species, overpopulated species, into more of a casual premium casual type consumer. And that is something that we can expand into, tons of markets. This is feasible in from Austin, Texas to Washington to any tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 market. So that's really on the company side with a focus on the dining. On the mental health side, I don't want to call it mental health because that has such a negative tone to it. On the awareness in the mental wellness and abilities space, uh, we're going to roll that out as a touring type venture. So think of a Van Gogh immersive show, but with a bit more of a positive impact, and a little bit more of an emotional takeaway. So that's on the company side. Now on the mission side, as I said, I just hope that people pick up on this impactainment concept and become a little bit better on how they engage. Right? If we can, get these big conservation groups, the WWFs or the Conservation Internationals, or we get the big entertainment groups like the Netflixes and the Disneys and so forth, to on the entertainment side to move a little bit away from the entertainment more into impactainment, and on the impact side move a little bit away from boring fact telling and a little bit more towards entertainment. That's really on the mission side, because ultimately we won't be able to change the world. We can only trigger and hopefully create concepts that are commercially successful but impactful, and hence have a big appeal for somebody to copy. I mean, everybody just go out and copy this as much as you can, because our future depends on it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's a very inspiring vision, and I feel like on the dining side alone, there's probably opportunities to expand beyond ocean type
Oh yeah,
experiences, right?
yeah, for sure. So we right now we do ocean positive dining, and seafood has been sort of like the initial one. It's a great format. People love seafood. People love sushi. And people love the appeal, the unknown of the ocean, right? And there is a lot of unknown. I mean, we're still finding new compounds for cancer medicine and coral reefs and sponges. They believe that 90% or so of the ocean species have yet to be discovered. There's just so much. It's kind of like space, right? So the ocean has been very, very appealing for us. But we have developed a space focused concept that you know takes you into space, but then I don't want to give away too much, but it still has a our planet type narrative in the end. Um, we are working a lot in the rainforest space. So yes, we're definitely trying to move from an ocean positive to a planet positive approach, right? Telling stories that are not necessarily tied to the ocean, but to space, to rainforest, to savannas, to mountains, to what have you. We're working with tourism organizations. I mean, there's beautiful spaces all over the place that have varying ecosystems. You know, when you look into a place like Peru, for example, they have everything from the mountain to the rainforest to the ocean. So you could think of expanding this into country-specific storytelling as well, working with tourism promotion agencies and so forth, as we have with the Bahamas, who have been very happy with the partnership. So there's a lot of opportunity to expand in terms of protein, in terms of storytelling, in terms of visuals, for sure.
Very cool. And when's the next facility opening?
Um, Hopefully in 2025. We've been we've been going a little larger than we anticipated, I think, at the beginning of the year, and larger always means a little bit more complicated in terms of everything from a licensing and permitting and construction point of view. So while we initially were hoping to have something open by the end of this year, the scale that we're now building at, I don't think will allow us to do that. But definitely in 2025 we'll have something great open with an immersive component on the dining side, a beautifully themed bar where every cocktail tells a story, with an amazing beverage partner, and then a pretty high capacity general seating component to it as well.
And it will be in Miami.
And that will be in Miami. Yeah.
What's the next city after that?
I don't know. Where should we go? What do you think?
Should
LA?
come out here. Come to LA. Yeah.
I think LA would be a great market for it.
I think for sure. It's the question, though. I did like your point you made about the reach. There is a danger in the place like LA that you would be preaching to people who already agree with you. So I don't. That's worth thinking about. But there's
Right.
probably people on the fence who, or maybe people who are completely intellectually aligned but need to be emotionally motivated to participate in the conservation movement. So it's probably still worth it in LA.
Yeah, I would think so too. I mean, look, you probably have a big middle, even though it's more leaning towards the narrative that we're trying to tell. Um, Anybody that eats seafood in LA is still a potential consumer for us,
Mm.
because most of the seafood choices, even in a place like LA, are not necessarily sustainable. They're certainly not ocean positive, I can tell you that. So
Yep.
I think there's still an opportunity. I would love to bring something to LA. Maybe we can work together on that.
Let's do it. I think this is super fascinating. I feel like if it was open, it's one of those things where I know for sure people would try it, and if it's well done, which it should be, I think it'll be successful. How did you get into this? Like, such a unique idea. Where did it come from for you?
Yeah, that's such a I my path has been a bit weird, probably. So I studied consumer psychology and economics. Um, and I've always had a passion for nature conservation. So that was sort of like the baseline. I studied consumer psychology because I was hoping to get into the conservation space with a bit more of a, let's apply the big CPG type marketing approaches to the conservation space. Um, Sadly, nobody wanted to have me. The business model of a lot of these conservation groups is unfortunately one where they're issuing papers. They go to conferences and so forth because that's what gets them funding. So they don't really, in certain cases, they're not necessarily incentivized to do that ground level change. So luckily, I studied economics as well. So as anyone would, I became a financial engineer with a focus on renewable energy, and lived in China for close to 8 years, structuring wind farm investments. And During my time there, I invested into a few ventures and came across a an immersive dome company. So building huge, massive, positive pressure, so inflatable venues. And inflatable sounds small, but when I talk about inflatable, 300 feet in diameter and 150 feet in height, so 100 meters in diameter, 50 meters in height, thousands of people inside, full 360 projection mapping. So I became a partner, ended up becoming a partner in that company, and then managed to steer a spin-off from that company towards the conservation space. So getting back to my passion, we did do a pre-seed round right before COVID. Sorry, with the intent of building a Cirque du Soleil for the ocean, if you will, in a big dome-based theater. COVID kind of messed that all up. Um, so we looked each other in the eyes and we said, look, well, this is the money we have left. How can we build something at 20 cents on the dollar of what we have? So 5x our budget, so to speak, and that's what we ended up doing. So almost by necessity, we became restaurateurs, if you will. But it's been super successful. We're accredited by the United Nations. We've worked with the deputy deputy prime minister of the Bahamas. We've been working with Nestle, with Deutsche Family, Mastercard. A lot of big companies and big organizations. The guests have loved it. So I'm not, you know, I'm happy about every little turn and twist along this journey because it got us to a point where we have something truly special and something truly fun, and it's the essence of Impactainment. I think we should have fun too.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned that you were always interested in this conservation idea. Where did that come from in your life? Like, is that something that your parents instilled in you? Like, how did that come to be?
Look, I think there's probably a couple of reasons. I've been, I'm from Germany originally, from Hamburg. It's, one of the most beautiful cities in Germany. It's super green. It has, I'm not sure if it's true, but we are saying that we have more bridges than Amsterdam and Venice combined. So it's a lot of waterways and so forth. So there's been you know, a lot of passion of for just natural, beautiful environments when I grew up. On top of that, I've always been very traveling quite a bit, very interested in different areas, from France to the US to Asia, and then I think the third part, and probably the most counterintuitive part, is that I loved to fish when I grew up. So I've been big in fishing. I kind of sucked at it, to be very honest with you. So I wasn't a great fisherman, but I love to fish. I was always like really captivated by anything that's under the water, and I've been reading books and trying to teach myself how to fish and catch fish, and that really gave me a lot of appreciation for waterways and for water quality and for fish. Even though you're eating them, you still have an appreciation for them. So I think that was the third factor that really got me to get a passion for the space.
Very cool.
And by the way, my parents are not, that's a funny thing. My parents were not big into fish, so I was really the weird one in that, bringing home fish, and then as a kid having to clean them, and then trying to find people to actually eat them with me because nobody else would.
That's really
So
interesting. Yeah, because normally people who come to fishing, it's because of their parents for sure. Because
yeah,
would you? Yeah,
no,
that's
for me
interesting.
it was definitely. I started diving very early too. I think I did a trial dive when I was about 12. These like trial diving lessons where they put a scuba tank on the back. I don't even know if that's still allowed, because that's probably fairly dangerous to do that with a 10 or a 12-year old. Um, but yeah, I did that very early, and it was just fascinating what's underwater. And I think that was a big part of it as well, where you just falling in love with this weird alien-like environment, and that has always been a big impact.
That's very cool. And I appreciate what you said about the a minute ago in that answer about the nonprofit space in general. It's kind of a criticism of it, which is like everyone gets together and they write these reports, and there's value, not to detract from the work that's being done, but to move things forward, we really do need groups like yours who are taking this to the point of action and to the point of commerce, quite frankly, because capitalism is such a huge part of our world. It moves like everything moves based on the financial incentives, like even recycling. Like we in my episode with the woman I mentioned, the whole industry is driven by money, and
Mm.
so this conservation stuff, to have the maximum impact in our lifetime, it has to be a part of the capitalist ecosystem and not just some theoretical movement unhinged or untied to the economy.
Yeah, it's so interesting, because I feel that a lot of the big players are really focused very much on that. The status through reports and all of these kind of things that then raise a lot of funding. But there are amazing groups out there, and shout out to people like Dr. Austin Gellinger of Beneath the Waves. Full disclosure, I'm an advisor to that group. Uh, Amazing shark conservation and blue carbon player. Oceanic. Oceanic is an amazing group, led by Laura Doriel. Clean Miami Beach is a very local group in Miami, but they're making a big splash, really going to the beaches every single weekend. Seaworthy Collective is a venture studio or incubator, that's trying to direct investments, startup investments into up and coming ventures. So it's so interesting, because the big players that are sucking up 99% of the funds are really focused on the theoretical space. And as you said, not to take away from it, I think we need to have research, but we kind of all already know that we're in a dire situation. I mean, what more research do we need there, right? We need research on new tech. on solutions to the problem, not telling us that we all are going to die soon. So it's a little bizarre how much funding is going into the space that is purely theoretical and factual when you see these amazing groups. Earth Echo, by the way, is another one by Philippe Cousteau and Ashland Cousteau, which is a youth group movement. So you see these small players that are kind of like starving almost, um, but they're so action driven and really trying to create change. And then you have the big guys that are sucking up a lot of the funds. And I'm not blaming or shaming or criticizing anyone. It's the reality of what it is. But you wonder if there's a slight misalignment in incentives there.
It seems like it. As an observer, I'm not really in the movement. I'm a supporter and sympathetic, obviously, but it seems like everyone is so focused on convincing the people who don't want to believe there's a problem that there's a problem.
Right.
When when it's obvious, like the Pacific garbage patch, right? You don't have no. There's no more research that needs to be done on that. We need
Right.
to invest in the technology and get that cleaned up. Go out there and clean it up. To me, it seems like a fairly straightforward process that would just involve some money, but it's not like we don't know how to pick it up. We can use
Right.
nets and whatnot. Whatever. That's just one example, but that's writ large across the whole thing, the whole issue.
Yeah, and sometimes we're just haters too. I
Yeah.
mean, look, you talk about that. There's this company or this initiative, the Ocean Cleanup, right? Which has these ships that are trying to clean up the Great Garbage Patch, and but then you have people in the conservation space that are saying, oh, but it's not cleaning up the microplastics below it. I was like, yeah, but at least they're doing something. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And we have to really get to a point of action. As long as that action is somewhat net positive, take that action. you know I can tell you what's not necessarily action is to write more papers about theories of what could, should, or hadn't been done. So I think we need to get to a point where we're have a little bit less of a hater mentality too, and really applaud the people that are trying to create change. As long as that has a net positive impact, doesn't matter how small, at least somebody's doing something.
Yeah. I think that's a great point and a great place to end this conversation. Daniel, I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm super excited about your vision and mission, and I can't wait to check out one of your experiences as soon as they're ready, man.
Yeah, I hope that we can bring it to LA, and if not, I hope to have you in Miami. Thank you so much for your time and getting me on this platform. I know we've had it's been a long time coming. I think that's what you call it. But
Yeah,
I'm glad we finally made it. I really appreciate your time, and yeah, thank you so much.
you're welcome, man. Thank you.